Okay, state your name and your age.
John A. Sanders. Now I'm 68 years old.
Okay, when did you, or how was your election? Let's start at the election. When were you elected into city council?
That would be 2001, following the 4 years of my associate Mario Salas, where I was a part of his team during that time, and of course I was his campaign manager that elected him. And during his last term, the late Reverend Claude Black had a meeting with me. Of course, we were already sitting on the San Antonio Fighting Back board together. And I can recall one day, because I used to give him a ride home, he looked at me, well, what are you all going to do? And I said, well, we have to find someone to run, da-da-da-da-da-da. He said, no, no, no. And I was, of course, already on the Edwards Aquifer Authority. And he said, well, no, you need to consider the run. It's just you need to do this. The community done da-da-da-da. He gave me all that. And now, Reverend Black, you know, I'm not really interested in being city. I'm fine where I am. As a matter of fact, I'm coming down the back end of my activism like this. And he said, no, well, you need this one last whatever. So I took it upon myself, understanding my quote-unquote community commitments and bonds and feeling responsible. I took that challenge to say, okay, I will do this. So I made plans to do this. And at that time, Book, I was, when it comes to elections, I was 14-0 since '83. So it was a question of just a continuation, and we had started some things, and Mario had started some things that needed to be finished. And when you change people, sometimes projects fall to the wayside, and we had some things to continue. So I said I would do it, and this would be my quote-unquote last hurrah in that sense of the word. And so I agreed to do it, and I took on the challenge. And of course, when I took it on, the albatross around my neck was however Mario had left office with people being in Government Hill, which had the dispute over becoming a historic district and the division there. And a lot of the people there saw me, since I was socially aligned with him, that I would be just like him, and so they just automatically, without knowing me, opposed me. So I had to overcome a number of things just to be me to run, or other than just being a continuation of him, and those who had problems with him were going to have problems with me.
Do you remember who your opponents were?
My opponents were, of course, I say, first I'll say our good friend Byron Miller, because this would be Byron's 5th time running against the collective of either Mario or me in elections in District 2. And I think, I know it was Joel Williams. Those are the two that off the top of my head, I know it was the 3 of us. Yeah.
Do you believe that it would be competitive, or you just had an advantage?
I don't know. Well, every race you have to run. So, you know, I don't have an ego like that to think it was mine or the seat was mine to have. But I do know that at that time I had probably a tremendous amount of community experience, a tremendous amount of interaction with the governmental entities as a community leader. And of course, at that time, our history with OUED and Frontline 2000, which incorporated neighborhoods, other activists, programs, nonprofits in the community, the church community, because of course I came up in the church community too, gave me, I thought, maybe, if not an advantage, the name recognition and a track record of getting things done in the district. Capital projects, funding of nonprofits and things before I was ever in city council. So I think the community knew that I was able to do the job.
So you do believe you have an advantage?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Any, I want to say unique strategies, or do you remember how much you won by? Was it close?
I had no. Yeah, no, meaning no, it was not just me running away with it. Yes, there was a runoff. Anytime in District 2, because of a lower turnout, if you have more than 2 candidates, you pretty much, if one can siphon off even 5 to 10%, 7-8% of the vote, you're pretty much going to be in a runoff, unless you're just going to take it if it's between 2 or 3 individuals who are known, Because Byron was known. He was well known. He's from San Antonio, had family history, and whatever he depended on as his own history. And of course, he was a member of Bethel AME at the time, and he had church history and things like that. So he thought he was, and he had run 4 other times previously. So of course, he thought he had an advantage of being known and recognition to run.
Do you remember what your estimate and then actual amount of money needed to run for office?
Oh, man. Let me put it this way. First of all, one of the main reasons I did not want to run was because City Council, unlike the Edwards Aquifer Authority, I knew would require fundraising and money to run. My effort to win the Edwards Aquifer seat, which was a regional seat, I only had one fundraiser. I only took in $150, and I won that race by, I got 13,000 votes in my run there, and then I won re-election to the Edwards Aquifer. I served a total of 6 years. So I was not interested. I was not a fundraiser. As an activist, I wasn't interested in the fundraising part. And it's amazing, that's the part later on that I dealt with as a conflict. But in the beginning, it worked out. The same people who had backed us as Mario's candidacy and his service to the district, I knew a number of those people who were involved in raising funds and doing fundraising for political candidates. And then I had relationships, and people knew me. I had done, a number of years in Leadership San Antonio and things like that, and I served 2 years on the steering committee of Leadership San Antonio. So the connections in that area were there. And the knowledge of who I was there, and where I was coming from was there, and what my agenda was out there. So people were very comfortable with supporting.
Estimated 5,000, 10,000, 20,000?
Oh no, it took at least, I'm gonna say about $75,000 to $100,000, at least.
That was the estimate.
And I'm estimating. That's from not looking really at the actual amount of money.
Find out what was the actual.
Yeah.
I know the estimate is one thing. The actual is something different.
Yeah, but I'm going to give it, to not try to minimize it as being small. It took at least around $75,000 to $100,000.
Okay. So do you believe in that effort, since it was new to you, that maybe down the road, there not so much there's a gray area of a donation / contribution to favor?
One thing that happens if you don't know it and you're looking at it from the outside, people make a direct correlation between people who donate to you and your actions on council, policies you pass and things of that nature. And then if it benefits a person, then people think you knew that person was going to benefit when you voted for a certain thing. One of the things that happens is, in your fundraising efforts, a lot of your money comes in through a bundle. Those lobbyists, those people who deal with City Hall, who put on fundraisers for you, and people who give checks or give donations to you, you've never met them. You really don't know them. So you're not going around looking at the list every week, and then you see what the agenda items are for that week, and you say, now, does so-and-so, anybody on my donor list match? You're not even in that mentality. And of course, I've never had a history in any of my career, any of my nonprofit careers, as president of any of the boards, L. Austin Community Center, UCPPOC, sickle cell anemia, OUED. Have I ever been involved with money in that sense of the word? So I was never interested in that. And money was not going to influence how I voted. So I wasn't interested. If you gave me money, fine. If you didn't give me money, fine. And I didn't make my judgments on any of my issues based on money.
Now, one of the things that I remember, a good friend of ours, now passed away, Norcell Haywood.
Yeah.
He had mentioned to me part of political favor involved finance.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, is that a correct assumption? Because
Norcell was in the business of acquiring contracts and dealing with government entities, making proposals, and everybody who does that from back in that day, Carol Munoz, Pape Dawson, who does major engineering for the city, all those major contractors, they donate to the council candidates who are running for office. This is a perpetual thing. Anybody major who does business with the city of San Antonio, contractors, construction people, whatever, they donate to council. Those developers who want to do projects in your community, they're told if you want to, access, you want to meet this council. I met people on the merits of their projects or whatever their interest was. I never went down the list to say I'll meet them based on did they donate to me, did they give me money, and I'm sure my record reflects that, and my background reflects that.
But could it be understood?
Mm-hmm.
This is how we do business.
Yeah.
Because
If someone wanted to play the game that way, they could play the game that way.
I remember, and I can't remember exactly if he was in office, but I remember Cisneros' daughter got married,
Okay.
and there was a who's who at the wedding.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah, so we could assume based on certain gifts that there was a little bit of favor.
They may be trying to be favored, but if Henry Cisneros, being who he was, that didn't determine his judgment. You gave my daughter something, so I'm gonna give you a $300 million contract to do whatever with the city, and this is being scrutinized across the board. I need 6 other people or 5 other votes to go along with me, so I have to sell this project on the merit of the project. That gift of my daughter is not gonna make the difference on whether you're gonna vote for that or not. Yeah.
But it would be understood that, hey, this was substantial.
If that person wants to play the game that way, they can.
Okay.
But that person who has that vote is in charge of their integrity to determine why and how they're going to vote.
Okay.
Mm.
Because again, everything I want to say, not so much before Sanders.
Yeah, no.
There was a level of expectation.
Mm-hmm.
Of, hey, you want to get something done?
Oh well,
you
now.
a party or because y'all, I think at the time y'all got a car allowance, right? You got certain things.
We got okay. Here's what happens in political office. You have 2 funds. You have your campaign fund, which even when you win, you may have fundraisers that still go into your campaign fund. If you think you're going to run for re-election or whatever, you're still having fundraisers as you're serving in office. Those monies, when you meet with constituents, let's say some neighborhood association wants to meet with me and I schedule a meeting and my suggestion is let's meet at Mr. and Mrs. G's. Because I would try to, of course, perpetuate business in my community. So if people want to meet with me, I would bring them into the community and pick businesses in my community, with probably many of them that had never been to meet with me. Because that brings them business and that exposure, and it shows my community that I'm representing them. I spend my money in their businesses and I bring business to them. So you meet with them. When you bring your community in, these are your neighborhood people, you can pay for that dinner or that lunch out of either, if you're going to talk about your future campaign and how you want them to help you in strategies of your campaign, you can pay for that out of your campaign fund. If you're talking about their neighborhood projects and you want to talk, then you can pay for that out of your expense account that you have as city council. You can take a 1 monthly car allowance, flat fee. At that time, it was $400. Or you can keep your receipts if you feel that you spend more than that on gas, on constituent business during the month, and turn in your receipts, and you can be reimbursed up to that amount. I wasn't keeping all those receipts and running all. Just give me a flat fee and I'm good. And that's where I was on that. Yeah, but yeah, you can pretty much eat lunch, eat dinner. There are certain expenses that you have. I don't know if city council has, like state representatives, you have a clothing allowance. Whatever your expenses are for you to do the job, you can claim those kind of expenses.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Now there are limits, but you can claim those kind of expenses.
Now let's get into the details.
Okay.
And of course, you can say stop or no comment.
Okay.
But the gentleman in question, when did you first meet him?
Oh, goodness. A year and a half in. We're talking about me?
Yes.
We're talking about a year and a half in doing the contractual debate for Line Burgers. proposal to become the tax collector for the city, collecting delinquent taxes. And even during that time, I stated what my objections were with the contract from the dais. That's why and I don't want to get ahead, I stated my objection from the dais, what my concerns were with the contractor and how they were going to move a training facility to Austin and hire people in Austin to collect San Antonio taxes. And of course, I was looking at the staffing and the number of people they brought to that city council meeting because they were trying to get the contract and they were trying to have a show of force. And they bought the employees from the company they already had. And I made note of looking out in the audience that I didn't see many people who looked like me. And this should be a San Antonio contract. We should not be, if we're going to employ people and we're going to be collecting taxes in San Antonio, we should have people from San Antonio who work for you, who's doing the tax assessment. I sent them back with that proposal. I held 2 meetings, and with the person of question during that time, and it's on the record, when they asked me, and I really appreciate Kathy Little at the end of all this, giving a statement she gave in her newspaper at the time about those meetings and what the FBI told her. When he asked me, well, we'd like to do something for you. Let me put a note there. Many developers and people who come to meet with council people ask not necessarily what we can do for you personally. They know better than to do that. That's why I made it clear to the person of interest, you can't do anything for me. That's on the record. But they would ask, just like one of the major sports teams owners asked, what could they do for the community or for me as the office holder in the community for the AT&T Center? And when we changed the name of the center, whatever. And of course, I chose Lakeside, where we were trying to do a park, if they could assist in, if one all wanted to donate to help the lighting, fund the lighting, and of course the other commitment that they had made with Mario for the drainage and for Willow Springs Golf Course and the aesthetics around there for Mario to agree to bring the AT&T Center.
So that makes sense for them to do that.
That's what politics is.
Right.
And so by them making that agreement, when I met with him, I said, no, you can't do anything for me. After that, I received a phone call from a person of interest in our community, a pastor and a church, whose one of their major missions is the taking in of children of incarcerated parents. And I get a call that the lights are going to be turned off, the utility bill, the electric bill, CPS bill is behind, and the 18 children that they were housing would be dispersed. Now, of course, this is a church in our community, it's a black church, and these are children of color. And these are children whose parents, many of the church members knew, and whatever, but this was the ministry of that church and a good friend of mine. What I did when I made a call to say, would you also want to do something for the community? And I've done this before. It was nothing out of the bailiwick. The mistake I made is when in the transfer, when they agreed to do it, and they said, where can we drop off, bring it to my office? I'll call them, they can come to my office and pick it up because the bill, the CPS bill needed to be paid. You know how that goes. By a certain deadline, or they were going to come turn off the electricity. And it's a desperate situation. The problem was they bought cash. Just the transfer of that and the pickup, as the FBI declared, he didn't receive any money. He didn't deposit any money in his bank account because, of course, these that were marked. And so that kind of killed the case of that. And so they wanted to use it as you were bribed. Like I said, I went on the dais. Everything I had opposed for Lionberger, I had put it on the public record. They came back, a subsequent meeting, changed the site. All this is public knowledge. It's all on the record. Changed the site. It would be in San Antonio. They agreed to hire a number, this percentage, more people, I was good to vote for them. It had nothing to do with the exchange of that money. But the one thing you find out when you're dealing with the federal government is if you don't have the resources to defend yourself, you can be as innocent as you want to be. But once the federal government puts their hand on it, they want to, unless you have the resources to go to court and pay $400 an hour for a federal attorney to defend you on a trial that may last a week or 2 weeks. And as I stated in my statement, I'm not going to bankrupt my family. There's no way I'm going to do that for the because that's what it would be, and it'll still come out the same. Because the prosecution rate and rate of conviction federal courts 99 point whatever percent. So that's the conjuring I was caught in.
So the difference could very well been a difference of I got cash to here's the check to CPS.
Yeah. That was the difference.
That was the
And my friend who's hard was, but man, if I could have gotten to court, got his testimony on the record, because they interviewed him and all that, but it's the prosecutor's choice. And so at my sentencing, the Judge Ferguson, looked at me and said, I'm having a problem. Even with that 11 months, I'm having a problem. I think this needs to be, but of course, as you know, the prosecutor runs the court. And whatever that judge, he was affable, he was forthcoming. We found him to be very engaged. We enjoyed, but he wouldn't lower that sentencing. I thought, of course, because of my PGA, not necessarily opposition, but my not being so on the fast track. Because of my years at the EAA, the Edwards Aquifer Authority, knowing about water, knowing where this golf course was going to go at TPC at the Marriott, which was going to be over some parts of the recharge zone of the Edwards Aquifer, I was very concerned. We still had people out in the field. The conclusion of the survey of the catchment zone, the natural areas where we collected water was still being identified. Once you allow concrete trucks, construction to start, this is limestone. This is San Antonio's sole water source.
So were you in the way of that, of getting done? Because it eventually got done.
It was going to get done,
but it got shot.
But I was one of 2 people who voted no. The Julian Castro, who I served on city council with, was the other vote who voted no. And the only reason I said I'm not against the project, I made it clear. But the fact is, we haven't had the conclusion of the survey. And then the whole thing about water and the understanding of water, and I went through all of that night. Reverend Black told me he stayed up that night because my turn to speak didn't come until around 12 midnight that night, because that was a major deal in San Antonio. Well, a lot of folks have told me after that vote and everything, I had somewhat of a target on my back, but I didn't believe that. I just think that decision was a bad decision that I had made. But it was not anything leading to a bribe or conspiracy or anything of that nature.
So at the same time this is going on, there's another councilman, I don't call it secretly, but there's another FBI investigation going on parallel to yours.
Yeah.
Did you see anything that...
And as it was said in court, I'm not in any of that 400 and some hours of tape. I was not a part of any of that, didn't know anything about it, and that is the one thing I loved about my attorney. And let me give Jay Norton, who was my attorney, stood up and objected and said, Your Honor, you reviewed all the tape, he's not on it. He had no knowledge of any of this. And to prosecute him for what he didn't know I mean, how do we do that? Because he wasn't a part of it. This was what it was, but of course he can't go to trial. He chose not to do that because I understood what that meant.
Any particular people or vultures, so to speak, because it sounded like they were circling city council for corruption.
Well, they were doing that across the country. If you notice in different cities, the FBI was doing that, and especially a number of people of color, council people of color, were being targeted on that level. They went from councils to state representatives and these kind of things, and that's routine. You should know that when you get elected public office, that's if you don't think you're important enough, you may try to, but you find people in Congress who are using their using their campaign money for slush funds, for personal slush funds and things of that nature. So you can't think you can do that for any length of time, and and it's not going to come up wrong, because your reporting mechanisms for state, your funds you spend, your receipts, what you spend it on is going to be there, you know. And even though now ethic violations are not necessarily enforced, those are still things you and I never had any kind of violation like that when it came to money.
Do you believe if you were not black, the same outcome would have been the same?
I don't. Well, let's go here. At the same time, I received this particular money. If you notice, when this became an issue, the mayor returned the $18-some thousand he had received from Lineberger. That bill that needed to be paid that I collected was $2,500. So people knew me, you're gonna say, John, the black man, settled for, as a bride, $2,500. I was retired from the state. I didn't need the money. I had income, I've never, and other resources that I had. So,
So the same scenario happens to the mayor, and he gets to return the money.
And everybody, it was in the news. He returned his money, his $18,000, and a few other councilmen returned their money.
But you couldn't return it.
Of course not. One of the things I think also happened, Bobby Pettis, who was known around the council circles as I used to call him, as the shadow mayor. He was like the mayor's whip. Like in Congress, you have a whip or majority leader, and it had gotten known that the mayor had asked Bobby, because it was his last term, if he would ask me if I would take his place after the next election. And so it became known that I was going to take Bobby's place as the shadow to Ed, and what that meant was, you helped the agenda get formed. You were there on Wednesday nights. You was going to take more time in dealing with issues and how they would be on the agenda. And of course, I would have the advantage of the issues of District 2 and being more point of getting those things on the agenda that I wanted to get on. So when that kind of word got out, and I agreed with Bobby, he said, you're going to have to be down here with him, and you're going to have to do this, that, and the other. I said, well, this will be my last 2 years doing that, and I'll do it. And a few people, heavy hitters, non-elected power brokers in the city, saw me receptions and just walked up to me casually, let me know that they understood I was going to be. So then I knew that too, put that extra whatever, because when you get in the power circles and things like that, there are other people who may be jockeying for that, or people who just didn't want that to happen. So I understand that.
But somehow the respect level was there.
Yeah.
But there was others that might have said, hey, we don't want John.
Oh,
there.
well, look at my activist background. You look at my history, whatever, and how we had progressed over the years and moved on from our activist careers into the electoral whatever. And we might scare some people. Yeah. Yeah.
So back to tactic.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe you were a
casualty of
casualty and poster child of corruption?
Oh yeah. Or used as slight corruption, but as people, like I said, if you look at the writings afterwards, this wasn't the confusion or this isn't what it seemed to be, and after it came out that I wasn't on the tapes of the larger and knew nothing about any of that, then I was a casualty. Kathy Little, who had been not an adversary, but Kathy had been a campaign manager for Byron for years, and Kathy used to, give us the blues about being in power and being elected and letting somebody else take the seat. So if you win it, you have it, but you have to run to win it. We've been in this community just as long, but I appreciate it. That's why I want to mention her. She interviewed the FN. She posted in her paper the quote that they said that they concluded that I had not taken any money. I had not used any money personally. I had not deposited any in my bank account, because they were watching that too. If I had taken that cash and put it in my checking account that day, they would have it. That didn't happen. They saw exactly what happened, but they still used it. They interviewed the person and saw that, but they did admit and let her know we didn't have him using any of the money like that. Or
do you remember being interrogated and the kind of questioning?
Oh yeah.
Anything that tripped you up or anything that you wish you could have said differently?
Oh no, I realized when I went in my first meeting with them, they only asked me, "Do I know this person?" I said, "I don't know. I know. I mean a lot of people." And then they showed me a picture. Yeah, I've met with him. I meet with developers. I meet with people all the time. So then when they showed me who they were talking about, I said, "Yeah, I met with him over the whatever contract or whatever." And I told them what I had nothing to hide. And I revealed that, and as my lawyer said, when they listen to the tapes and my testimony, like the judge, he's been upfront, because I know that's the one thing you're not going to do. Even when you're just talking to an agent, you're not going to lie, because that's a charge in itself. So, and like he said, the prosecutor said he was very affable, met with him when I needed to meet with him. He was very truthful, very open. But the prosecutor, and when they want to get convictions because their careers are based on convictions and whatever, and this was the move at the time, so I'm going to be a casualty, that promoted his career. But I'll give him credit. When I came home and was on probation, they released me early. So yeah, he doesn't have to do.
Do you believe, and this is coming, 2020,
Okay.
if you would have had the finance to fight it?
Oh, I would have done it.
Like a Donald Trump.
Or my good friend John Wiley Price in Dallas. I was talking to John, and see that trial went a month, but John had the resources because they'd been after him for years. Because his activism and his radical nature, John he's very independent, very supportive of his community. So the powers that be in Dallas, Dallas, being Dallas area, they were after him for years.
Now the outcome wasn't perfect, but do you believe a better attorney would have got you off?
Not a better one. If I just had the money to pay for the attorney that I had to go to court.
Okay.
If I had the money to pay the $400, $300 per hour court cost per day, and you say you calculate you're spending 4 to 6, 8 hours in a courtroom per day, 5 days a week, 4 days a week, for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, not knowing how long that's gonna go. I wasn't fixing to mortgage houses and
So at that point, the city, you're still a city employee though, right?
No, not employee, elected official.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not an employee of the city. But I come under the charter, the protection of until whatever. Of course, here comes the wave of you should resign and or step. No, I wasn't doing that because I still had an agenda, and I knew they couldn't do that, and I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, and I could sleep with myself, and I knew the facts would bear out. I knew my community knew that, so I wasn't doing that. And so once they realized I wasn't leaving and everything.
I guess, and I remember that time in particular, it felt as if you were stymied from any type of vote, or your vote didn't count during that time.
Mm-mm. If you notice, you'll look at history, a number of ministers at the end of that particular 2 years, and then you look at the facts that of the things that I had gotten done in those 2 years versus, and not in any way in contradiction to some of the things that had gotten done in previous times in 4 years, and the money I had put in projects, I had gotten a tremendous amount done. The Carver had gotten done, the parks things had gotten done. I can't go down the whole list of all the capital improvements. I have a list of those things. The things he had done, the park in Dale Crest, the park in Lakeside, like I said, the Carver, that was the big thing. Reverend Black and the Carver, our institutions, some of the things in all of the streets and projects, the sidewalk projects that we got done, that was a major emphasis for me for the children who were walking to school in the rain, because I used to ride the district after it would rain and identify especially those communities where kids were walking to school. And I identified those streets to use my sidewalk and street money on to do that for children who were walking walking to school and stuff. Everybody wasn't catching the bus to school. And if it rained, you shouldn't have walking in the street in water. So those were my kind of emphasis, and we got those done. I think it was Reverend Smith at the time, a number of ministers they interviewed, and they said, we've never seen these many trucks and streets and things that are getting done over in Willow Woods. Belgium Lane, when we changed the name to AT&T Parkway, and all of those Kono going into Willow Woods and the park down there, Pletz Park, the stuff we got done for there, and then the flooding thing, representing them when we found out that after the Great Flood, how the water system, SAWS had been dumping their construction debris behind, and that's how Willow Wood got flooded during the flood of 98, 99, helping to lead that suit, appointing Mr. Thomas to San Antonio River Authority and those kind of things, and moving progressively to deal with the county to clean up and get Willow Woods back on track. Yeah.
If you had to do that whole meeting over, what would you have done different?
Which meeting?
The meeting of the exchange of the funds.
Oh, I wouldn't have done it. It was just the desperation of them. I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have done it. If I thought that was going to lead to that, oh, of course, you know.
Do you remember any body language or anything that made you suspicious of him at the time, or?
Probably just the point of, we want to do something for you. What can we do for you?
He repeated it?
That thing twice, yeah. I did say, look, because, you know, I'm very direct. Look, like I said, you can't do anything for me. If it's something in the community, that whatever, let me, you know, if y'all could donate to this, or donate during the Thanksgiving period when we have turkey collection for people who are doing the giveaway of turkeys, like I would do every year. One year I think I collected 40-some turkeys. The gentleman over at Texas Towing, who had the towing contract with the city, he bought turkeys. I got a call. John, can you help us? We're gonna do the turkey thing. Can you help me raise? Let me get on the phone. So who do you call? You call these people. Say we'd like to do something for the community. When it's time, let us know, because they are going to doing things in the district. So that's who you call. I have a church that's going to do a turkey dinner for the homeless or whatever. I need. How many you need? I need 10 turkeys. Deliver to who? They don't come to me. And that kind of thing. That goes on. Those are kind of things that happen.
So you could have actually said, you can donate to my my reelection.
I've never done it.
Okay, but you legally could have said.
Oh, of course.
Okay.
I'm going to have a fundraiser on the 20th. Appreciate your support. You can do that all day long.
Okay.
Yeah, but you cannot tie someone donating to you to a specific act. You cannot say, I will change that street if you donate to my campaign. No. And usually people who are in that culture, they know, or they will ask you, when's your next fundraiser? We'd like to support it. And you say, well, I think I'm having one on the 20th. Y'all invited, look to see you.
But, and I haven't heard the tapes, but what was the clincher, either for the FBI to say, I got him, or why did you say that in your head? Like, okay.
The exchange.
Okay.
The exchange.
That was enough?
That's enough. And they know, because they look at your situation, and they know whether you'll be able to defend this. They know that. That's why when I came out of the courtroom, and I said, when I apologized to the community, and I'm very sorry that I'm not able to put this on go to court and defend myself in the public arena, because it will cause me to definitely almost bankrupt my family, and I'm not doing that.
So the time span between the receiving of the funds and you hearing about a possible investigation is what, weeks, months?
Months.
Months?
I'm gonna say at least 2 to 4 months.
And you hear from this guy, or don't hear from this guy?
I don't hear. I hear nothing else.
He disappears.
He disappears because in council, it's ever. You're not making you know, you're meeting people all the time. The developers, your community people, your community nonprofits, your community boards, your community neighborhoods, and then here come people who want to do things in your community, or maybe not in your community, but they still need your vote. Let's say they want to do the a park on whatever. Well, that person still needs 5 votes. So that developer, he will schedule meetings with all the council persons to say, we would like to do this, can you support Councilman so-and-so? And now you're dealing with supporting your fellow council person. And there, I need your vote on this, I need your vote on that. I'm gonna ask them to come talk to you and explain what the project is, and would you like to have a meeting? Yeah, tell them to come talk to me if they want my vote for your project. And so you're meeting people for votes that are projects that are not even in your district all the time, but they need your vote when it gets to the council for it to pass.
Describe that day, either before they show up or the hint of.
I had just finished a meeting with the Police Officers Association, and if you look at the record, the Police Officers Association still endorsed me.
But that day that they.
I walked out of a meeting at the Western Hotel on Commerce Street. Walked back, it was a Wednesday, and walked back to City Council. And they knew who I was, of course. And they waited for me to get back to City Council on the 2nd floor, back to my office downtown. And then 2 agents walked into my office.
And what did they tell you?
You're John Sanders, and they showed me their badges, and we're here, and they told me you're under arrest.
And that's when you knew something was up.
Oh,
You had no idea prior.
I had no idea what this, and then of course, in sitting, waiting to be arraigned, I figured out it had to be something dealing with. And when they called me and they said blind burger vein, whatever the deal was, I knew exactly what it was. Yeah, it says that it was the cash exchange. Yeah.
Now, were you able? Did they release you that day? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was maybe there 3 hours. And let me add this to that, because being in the ministry, growing up in a Christian environment, and all of that, I acquainted myself to being in a position of one of the disciples. I'm sitting there in the holy cell, and I'm singing hymns. I'm going back to the roots of my faith, and I'm realizing that having been a preacher some 30-some years, that some sermons you preach, this is a sermon you're going to have to live. And for whatever reason, as I've preached many times, and Jesus said they persecuted me, they're going to persecute you. And I have lived whatever, so this coming to me right now, this is a test for you.
So in so many ways, if the role was to stymie your influence in the community, that did it.
Yeah. If that was to be in that sense, yeah. That kind of stopped that progress in that way. But the things for me not to have resigned, then I could still be downtown, and I had enough support from my colleagues who believed in me to still vote with me on projects to get the district done, and I finished my term.
Any fight once inside as far as, hey, I'm innocent, or you're just content with, let me do my time and get out of here?
No, I knew, like I said, when you know history, the history of men of color, and I certainly don't subscribe that my situation or me personally are equal to the sacrifices and the statue of the kings and the exes and whatever. But you look at Adam Clayton Powell in Congress or whatever, leaders of our persuasion who've had to do time, or who, because of their situation and their commitment to their communities, the powers that be determined that he's sincere just about, and he's not for sale, and he's not doing, and we know his agenda, we know his belief, he may get too big for his britches. That goes on all the time. So this is an attempt to either, if not assassinate you, discredit you, or, yeah.
Tough time, 11 months. Were you able to help anybody, or was anybody
This
able
is
to
the
help
unique.
you
This is the
inside?
unique thing of this whole experience, and in thinking about or relating it, and I've never even been able to do that. Thank you for the opportunity to even do this. Great support of mine, friend of mine, came to the office after I was released. I went back to my district office, and of course, supporters start coming in to see me and whatever. And Kim, why is this happening to you? Why you and whatever? And she reminds me of my response years later, and couldn't believe how awesome it was when I said, "Why not me?" When you've been walked this Christian journey, and you've been taught, why not you? It's gonna happen to me. So, and so this is a sermon that I can't preach. This is a sermon I'm gonna have to live. So I knew what kind of journey that was, and I was determined to live in my faith, the same Lord I trusted, who brought me to this point, who had blessed me to be in this position and given me the tools, the talents to be and do who I was, would not leave me. And this was going to be the proof of it. When I arrived at El Reno, which was known as Camp Fluffy, it's a 218 low security facility. There are no bars, not like TV. There were no bars, there was no clanging, like a dormitory style open facility. The only time I went through whatever was checking in and checking out. You check in, they send you across the street. You walk back out, you walk across the street, you self-surrender. So I flew in, self-surrendered, had to be there at 2 o'clock a certain time. I show up at the facility where I'm going to be, and as soon as I get there at lunchtime, I understand that my cousin Frank Sanders, who I never met, don't know if this is really my cousin, but Frank had statue. He said, "This is my cousin." They knew I was coming. "Your cousin Frank, you Frank's cousin?" So of course for me, I guess I'm in Oklahoma, I don't know where I am, but I'm Frank's cousin. The first night, of course, your age sign. This is a nonviolent, this is white collar facility. Total of 218 people. This is not 1,000 people, 500 people, 218 people. And that first night, I was assigned to 4 people to a room. Huge room. You have a locker space, your own bed. Some younger guys. So Frank arranged that day to have me move where he was. So I finally met my cousin Frank. And Frank had statue. I realized there that the Lord had a greater need for me. He said, "I have need of you. Don't worry about your public persona. I'll take care of that. Don't worry about men, reputation, whatever. I got you. I'll restore you. I'll keep everything that you had or whatever." And of course, the most precious thing to me at that time was my being separated from the city from my mother, who was in her 90s. And the fact that I asked the Lord to let my mother be there, because this is the first time she didn't have me around in that situation. She'd been a widow for years, lived alone, that sort of thing, and I had great friends who looked after my interest in that, but that was my major concern. But the other part was when the Lord said, "I have need of you," was the men and young men I encountered, and the ones when I started going to the Friday night Protestant service. And over the course of a month and a half of me just sitting among them, and they just asked me, to lead a lesson or do whatever, and they discovered what my gifts or my talents were. And when that happened, every 5th Sunday, which you were allowed in the chaplaincy on the Sunday worship service, which was a Protestant service, which was at 12 o'clock on Sundays, that if they had a request for someone to do a sermon on the 5th Sunday, you were allowed. After I had preached that first 5th Sunday, I preached every 5th Sunday until I left. They assigned me the leader of the Friday night service. So I had the opportunity to teach young men who had converted, and some older ones, some cats who had been major drug dealers throughout Oklahoma and whatever, who had converted. They were now saved, and a prison salvation can be real hard because when they change, they come hard, condemning people, whatever. And I had to tell them it's still about love.
So you didn't challenge your faith as in God, why me? It wasn't.
I had too much in the tank to know that's not what I needed to do. What I need to do is trust the law for whatever reason I'm in this situation. And it was a great growth thing for whatever reason I'm in this situation, and I preach your truth, you will prove yourself to me. I'm gonna be like the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I know he can save me, even if he doesn't, I know he can.
Looking back at that time frame, what do you think the domino effect was of the national rollout on corruption? Did something happen in New York or Chicago or LA?
Other cities, Jacksonville, I can't remember them all. And even after I came home, you still saw this progression of across the country. You still look at it.
So the president, FBI director is saying we got a nationwide problem, we'll fix it?
This is ongoing. They're gonna always do it as long as you have elected officials. Look at Congress. The congressman that got convicted here, 2 or 3 of them recently for lavish spending, and their wives. And the wife who admitted, we went on vacations, we went to Europe and whatever, who had to resign from Congress. And now their problem is some of them will just get slaps on the wrist, the embarrassment, I gotta go. But some of them are gonna get sentenced. They're gonna get sentenced. Yeah, I'm sure they are. And even the wives. Well, look at the ones with the college tuitions, paying for their children to be.
What do you feel about? I think about a statement that Colin Powell made about war, and he said, "I never want to fight a fair war." How do you feel about a statement like that?
He wants to get in and get out, get it over with. No, you don't want to be fair. You want the advantage.
And that's what the college scandal is all about.
Yeah.
Is I have an advantage.
Yeah.
I want to use my advantage.
That's right, but it's against the rules. It's against the rules. Because if that's the case, just like Bloomberg is trying to do this election, if you just have the money, just buy it. But the rules say, like the candidates are saying, he hasn't gone through the vetting. He hasn't stood up here on this stage. He hasn't handled questions. He hasn't debated us on his issues and whatever. So just buying an election and watching his numbers go up based on commercials, see, that's the whole thing of what power, money, and marketing can do. You know that.
So again, back to his advantage, he's saying, I don't have to fight fair.
Right.
If I do this.
Right.
And that's what money will allow
That's what money will allow you to do, because money is a great influencer.
So how do we turn around and say, hey, work real hard, make this money? Not so much you control your destiny, but imagine making the money and controlling your own destiny that I don't have to debate you.
Right.
I don't need to.
I don't need to. And I can, at one time, be a Republican. Now I want to be a Democrat because I'm being an opportunist. I'm playing sides. If he was so committed, why don't he run as a Republican against Donald Trump? He's got the money. He could run in the Republicans' primary, challenge him there. You are a Republican mayor of New York. But no, the opportunity is on the Democratic side. But of course, his bigoted remarks now catching up with him. What he said in 218 and all this throw him up against the wall conversation.
Do you believe people can change? And I make reference to, what's his name? He was an old governor, I think of Alabama. Segregation, no.
Oh, wait, Wallace?
Yes, Wallace.
But Wallace did change.
He did. You believe he honestly changed?
He did. Look, you got to look at what he went for after he had the conversion of with black people and people of color in his state. Now, of course, he was in a wheelchair then. He'd been shot. He was paralyzed. Yeah, he was coming down to the end of his road. A lot of people find redemption when they can see light at the end of the tunnel. Bloomberg's problem is he didn't say I'm sorry till he's ready to run. He's had plenty of time to examine his stop and frisk. But what he used to do, he doubled down on it. He never apologized till he decided he was going to run. So it doesn't come across as being authentic. When you're authentic, or you know, people pick up on when you're real. People know when you're real.
Can you verify or not verify that Trump has done more for black folks than Obama did?
I know Trump has not done more. Trump is riding the coattails and the wave that Obama started. Obama's last 3 years, he had more employment numbers in employment than Trump has had in his first 3 years. So this whole, we know what Trump is. He'll take credit for your stuff, my stuff, and whatever, and make it his own. But everybody who's been around knows George Bush is the one who put us in that hole, and it was Barack Obama saved the auto industry, saved we know.
So Trump is taking credit for Obama.
And that's why he likes the uneducated, because they don't know the difference. I am amazed at the civic ignorance of many of the general population. And Trump knows that, and that's what he plays on. Just believe me. Don't believe the news. You don't read. Just listen to me and watch Fox News. And we're almost at a point without our judiciary system saving the country, at a point where we're almost at a authoritative, totalitarian government, because the Republicans have just laid down and given him license, and there's no check and balance so far, other than the judiciary.
Any advice for current council people, and what do you have to say to your community if this is the last words you are to say to them?
Well, the demographics of the community are changing. If you're going to talk about District 2 and then District 120, state representative district, our demographics are moving further east when it comes to African American populations. We are now moving into Kirby and Converse and Selma, and so you're going to have a challenge. We still have the votes to be elected, but you're going to need moving forward coalitions to sustain keeping this a quote unquote black seat, if you will, because other groups are challenging, and they don't care about having this blend of color. They want, it's a matter of power, just like we're facing at ACCD, Jose and Gloria Ray, and he's doing a very good job of marking, getting around, having town hall meetings, putting out his plan. I've met him, and he wants to serve the whole district, which you have to be about serving the whole. And that was my revenue. I was known. Even though I had a strong community activist background, I served East Terrell Hills, as well as I served the Fort Sam area and my own in the inner city of District 2, as well as Bellcrest, Lakeside, Skyline, those areas. But and that was my commitment, to finish as much as I could get done for the district and stay focused, even with this. We finish that, and the Lord will take care of that. And so it was bittersweet for me to come home, believe it or not. Booker, when it was time for me to come home, they had the final service that Sunday, and testimonies of brothers they're going to miss me. How I taught them how to have a preaching service versus a teaching service. And I would have the fourth night of the week, if anyone thought they had a message, wanted to teach how to deliver that. So it was all of that. So it was really bittersweet for me. I was ready to come home. But I really, in one case, in the spiritual side, so now when I look in the Word about Peter being in captivity, when I read about John, when I read about Paul being in jail, in prison, and writing this, but I had that was a dungeon.
No homecoming?
No. We had television, I had a track, I played tennis, I won the tennis tournament, we had backgammon tournaments, softball tournaments, flag football tournaments. You could stay up all night if you wanted to. You had freedom to do that. You had 4 TV rooms, those kind of things. So it wasn't the kind of, situation to claim the hardship. Didn't have that.
Any ideas on hitting the ground running when coming back, or some type of celebration party? Or?
No. Well, I never was a partier. I've never been a partier. even my younger days, I would go out with my friends every once in a while, but I never been in there. If I want to have a party, I have my own parties. It was better.
But you know, not that you went to war, but there was an expectation when they came back from war that there was a sense of, you know, glad you're home.
Oh yeah, I was tremendously glad I was home, and glad to be back. Went back to work for fighting back. That I served, the board I served on. I was very grateful for that. Got my feet back in the community. We were going to D.C., got the $250,000 for the faith-based initiative that we had. I was the faith-based coordinator for fighting back. Did that when they changed the lines and Lamar Smith became the congressman for the East Side. Had never been on the East Side, had never been to the barber joint. Invited him after a meeting that the late Joe Scott called out at Wheatley Heights Church. Attended that with Willie Mitchell. He asked, he's got to bring John, John will know how to ask these questions. And so I went out there and I invited him to fight back, and I told him that $250,000 faith-based initiative money is being held up in D.C., and there's nobody closer to George Bush than you. You can walk in that office and get that money released. And he did. After he came to the barber Jordan, gave him a tour, history lesson. We went to D.C. that February, met with his chief of staff in the congressional lunchroom, came back home that March, went through the whatever situation. They got our tax number at Fighting Back. That money came, and the statewide initiative was on. And it also included the house of the Potter's House. T.D. Jakes' nonprofit got some of that same money that same year. Yeah.
Okay, let's close it out.
Okay.
Let's say my name is John Sanders and I am blank.
Okay, what am I supposed to be?
My name is John Sanders and I am your friend.
Okay. My name is John Sanders and I still remain your humble servant.
That's the last thing you want to say?
Today, yeah, I can't think of nothing else. Well, then after that, what would I think about? Remember that one thing we are not on record is Ivy's election. Because I went and got Ivy, and this is after I had come back. I had gone to Byron, had invited me again to the Juneteenth golf tournament. And I had been a guest at the golf tournament, I played. And of course, and my team, and he came over and he began to, of course, be in Byron, saying that he expected to win this time. Next year when he invites me to the golf tournament, I was going to have to come call him councilman. So, Brian, I don't have a problem with that, Brian, but you still have to run to win. Well, you're not running. You don't have anybody who can beat me. He thought I was just, you don't have anybody who can beat me. You're not running, and it's my time, and there's nobody else. Well, Byron, you can still be beat now. You have to run. So then my small little Capricorn ego, when I left that golf course, jumped up. And I got on the phone and I called my good friend Frank Dunn. And I asked Frank, where's that young lady? Is she still who used to work for the city that I knew? Because I knew Ivy as an employee. You think she's in John? I don't know, but I find out because I knew Frank knew her husband, and he knew. When Frank called me back, she wants to meet and consider it. Tell her we want to meet with her. We met with her, and we can put the campaign around you. I can get the funds, if you're willing to run. Nobody knew her in the community. She had no community track record and never been involved in politics at that sense. She'd worked for that housing trust, whatever, Merced Homes or whatever. She had moved from the city and was working for Merced Homes. And I told her, we can do it. She agreed. We put the campaign around her. Byron went to a runoff, of course. Byron had a 600 vote lead. He called her and asked her to get out of the race, and there was no way she could win. She called me on the phone. I was out at the Golf Club of Texas playing with my friends that we played on Monday. There was a little trophy we used to play for. I was out there with Reverend Herman Price, Reverend Jeff Garner, and Leaford Petty. And she called me crying and saying that Byron had called and asked her to drop out of the race. I started laughing. I said, I'll call him. So I called him on the phone. I'm on the 18th green, getting ready to putt. We're getting ready to go home. And I said, Miller, tell me you didn't just do what you did. He said, yeah, what? What? You know, Byron. You didn't just call and tell her to drop out. Yeah. I got 600 votes. Da-da-da. There's no way you win. She could just save all that time and just drop out now because I'm going to win. Byron, you forget who you're talking to. It's a brand new race. It's a runoff. Mr. Martinez is not going. His endorsement not going to help you. There's no Hispanic name on the ballot. They're not going to turn out like that in this vote. And I got 45 days. You're going to come back to me because you know your mouth and whatever you're going to come back to me. You don't have those 600 votes in your pocket. You got to run. And of course, Byron came back to us, and Ivy was successful that night and victorious, and I was done. I remember my friend, the late Vaishon Bird, called me that night, and he was very late, and then John Sanders. He said, I got to put you in class with the late Velmo Bellinger. You a power, bro. You come home, da-da-da-da, you take a novice, da-da-da, put a camp and get her to beat a guy who grew up in the community, has run as 6 times that Byron has run against, whether I was a campaign manager or I was running or I was a chief in an election that he'd run against me that he'd lost. And after that, you know, I talked to Byron. We saw each other at a funeral service at Second Baptist, and you know, Byron, his ego never changes. You know, if you stuck with me, we could have done something. I could have been and I let him finish, and I said, and if you'd listened to me, people would be calling you ex-councilman right now. And he, touche, you're right. And we get along with that like that. So, you know, but he hasn't invited me back to another Juneteenth golf. Oh, I haven't been to a Juneteenth golf tournament since then, but I'm not mad at it. But I told him, if you just kept your mouth closed and went on and ran your race and let me play golf and all that, it's my seat and I'm going to win it, and you don't have nobody. I just wanted to prove that, so I'm 16-1. And I don't know anybody else in this district that can say that. And the only one was my loss, that re-election when I ran under indictment. Yeah. And he had to take me to a runoff even then.
So what's next for John Sanders?
Oh man, it's going on now. I mean, I'm still doing reviews. I'm still a peer reviewer for SAMHSA, Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration in DC. A group, friends of mine, who got a contract as a consultant coalition. We're doing stuff in Philadelphia and whatever with nonprofits. So I'm like I said, if the Lord restored everything in tenfold, whatever, financially, one of the great nemesis, a woman, and I have to state her name because we love the Rankins, Carol Rankin, who lived in Government Hill. When they were trying to do the historic district and Mario was dealing with them, they had an immense hatred for him. And she told me she was not going to vote for me because I was his friend, and she was going to vote for Joel Williams because I was going to do the same thing he did. Once I got elected and I went through the process of letting Government Hill decide what they wanted to do, whether they were going to be a historical district, she started calling me Johnny. She came with the affection. Johnny, you know, I really am amazed. I had dinner at that woman's house during Christmas holiday. When I left to go home, she told me, Johnny, we'll keep your car. I had 2 cars, my other car and the Cadillac that I had. They kept my classic car in a garage they had at their home. And we're the best whatever now. Carol has since sold that house to Rankins, and they moved to Welcome, Texas. They have a ranch in Welcome, Texas. About to communicate how politics can change. But she got to see me as me. I told her, you can't just, no, you're with him, you're going to do the same thing he's going to do, I'm voting for Joel Williams. And then she related to me her experience of going to federal prison when she was a child protective agent, and she did a case against, and I'm sure you're going to edit this, the late Milton Guest. Milton Guest, who owned the tile company, Guest Tiles, went to court for divorce and wanted custody of his daughter. Well, he had been investigated for less than his 12-year-old child. She was the agent who investigated. When the DA's office wanted to hire her away from CPA, she related this to me over Christmas dinner. After dinner, and she looked at her husband and said, "Can I tell him now?" Over dessert, I was flabbergasted. Because I'd known her these years and where she was with me and everything. And that, "Johnny, I've been where you're going." Told me what was going to happen, related, "You're going to be fine. Da-da-da. We'll keep your car, you'll be home. This was no, we know you didn't, you just got caught up." She told me how she got caught up because the wife called her after the trial and said he had gotten custody. She was on vacation down at the casino in Louisiana. She said over the phone, she was so upset, "That bastard, he did that, he got that, I wish I knew I'd kill him." The FBI was on the phone. She never came back home. They arrested her and took her to Louisville, Kentucky.
Over the phone?
My mouth dropped. She showed me I couldn't believe Carol Rankin had done time. She told me, "And this is going to be, you'll be fine. They wanted you out, you were getting too much, this, that, and the other, and the powers to be determined," and da-da-da-da. And like I said, but I still equate that little whatever that wasn't no quid pro quo, wasn't no this for that, a tit for that. And I said, they have me on tape. What my objection was to the contract. They came back, gave the corrections they had done to the contract, and I said, well, I can vote for the contract. Did it all in public. No, whatever. But that's something the Lord intended for me to go through, for whatever he was preparing me to do. And now I still have people that I talk to from that experience that I know, some of the people that I met, and I understood when I read my word about being in the bowels and having to go in the valley because that's where it is, and getting mud and you got to go away. That's where he needed me. That's why I went, and because I was faithful to that and understood that, didn't worry about reputation, what people were going to say. I came home and the Lord, I'm telling you, I'm still living in it right now. Yeah. That's why I tell you, book, I'm going to be gone, da-da-da-da. Yeah, I've been able to do that. So, and like I said, that was going to be my last go around in politics. I was done. I wasn't seeking to run for county commissioner. I didn't want to do anything else. I had bought 16 acres out in Atkins, Texas. I was done. I had done 40 years of activism. I was done. Yeah, you know, as I said in my other recordings, it had affected my life, my marriage time at home, because I was committed. I was serving all these boards, spending all this time. Yeah, for my community, and I just, it's time for me. So I have no problem helping, mentoring whoever. I have no ambition to whatever, because I didn't have it then. I wasn't seeking to be in council in the first place. I loved being the man behind the man. I was fine with that, but I stepped up because my community said they needed me to do that, and I don't regret it, because I'm still living a very blessed life. Mm-hmm.
That's a wrap, John. Appreciate your time.
No problem, Booker.
One for the record books.